Hey, ladies, welcome to another episode of the Revitalized Womanhood podcast. I am joined today with my lovely guest, Emily Patel. And I think, okay, now am I thinking right? But I think it's been over a year since you and I connected originally. Has it been?
I
That's
believe so.
terrible. That's terrible. I'm pretty sure we were on our trip. Like we were out of the country when I very first found you.
I believe you mentioned that, and then we kinda just chatted back and forth, and then here we are finally.
Oh my gosh, finally, thank goodness. But I'm so glad that you pop back up into my feed. I hate it when that happens when you lose somebody that you're really, really, really interested in. Because I love what you're doing and I wanted to help be another platform for what you're doing because it speaks to me as well. So please introduce yourself to my beautiful listeners.
Sure, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Emily Patel, and I am the founder of Hopeful Mama Foundation. And the way Hopeful Mama came to be was through my own infertility journey that started out long ago now, it feels like. But I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. And through that journey of learning more about that and then going through the route of donor egg IVF and becoming a mom, I learned so much through that journey, but then also had a huge just heavy heart about helping others related to infertility. And so that is how Hopeful Mama was born, which I don't need to talk all about that right now, but it is a big piece of my heart. So I'm a mom to two through donor egg IVF. I'm married and I'm a nurse by trade, I guess, or by school, but my husband says I'm a philanthropist by heart. So I like to share that sometimes. But yeah, that's who I am.
I love that. I don't know how or where you even begin with, let's just talk about your story. Let's jump in there because I don't think people realize what that kind of impact has on a 25-year-old. Are you old enough to even feel the weight of what that actually means when that is happening to you at 25?
I think looking back at 25, I didn't understand the gravity of what they were telling me that day when the doctor came in and said, "Oh, yeah, by the way, you're in early menopause and you're never going to have a child of your own." What came over me at that moment was a shock because at the time I wasn't actively trying to become a parent or a mother. It was an incidental finding through other things going on in my life. And I didn't feel the weight of the loss of genetics initially. What I felt was, what do you mean I can't get pregnant when I want to? What do you mean I can't just be a mom when I'm ready? I realized in that moment that, well, gosh, I guess I didn't really think about having kids right at 25. I was just going to do it when I was ready. But now I need a kid. I want a kid. I want a kid right now, but now I can't have one. And so I think at 25, like you mentioned, you don't really realize the gravity unless you had maybe already been going through a journey and you were trying to actively, become pregnant, but I wasn't. And so for me, it was more well, I should be able to have a kid when I want, and now I can't. So now I need one. I want one. I want to be a mom right now. And it kind of catapulted you into that feeling of hurry, hurry, because now there's this other factor playing into it that you never realized was going to be a part of your story.
So how long before you met your husband?
So I was actually, this is something I've shared a little bit on social media through my page, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, if you've come across the posts or not. But at that time, when I was 25, I was actually married,
Oh,
and
okay.
I had gotten married really young, right after I turned 20 or maybe 21, and so when I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure, I had been married for a few years at that point, and it was kind of a devastating blow to both of us at that time, and we started navigating through that, and then through my journey, uh, which I guess I'm not sure how much to share right now about that part or later, but I ended up meeting my current husband, who is the one who told me about donor eggs, which I'm a nurse, but I didn't know anything about reproductive health, and so donor eggs wasn't something I was aware of until I met him. And he's the one who said, "Hey, you have an option here to carry a child. It might just look different than what you had anticipated." And so my journey kind of took me through a marriage, a divorce, and then meeting my husband, who is the father of my children.
If you're okay with it, I would like to talk about your previous marriage because that did impact you both. That is a big deal. That is something that is so heavy for couples to go through this journey and the heartache and what did that all look like and what kind of mental health did that have to take as far as repairing even, going through, repairing to be able to get past it?
So our journey was so unique, I feel like, when I was young, because, like I said, we weren't actively trying to have a baby. But then once we found out my diagnosis, we were like, well, what do we do now? How do we navigate this? And we were very familiar and comfortable with the thought of adoption. And at that point in my life, based on what the physician had told me, we thought that was our only option to parenthood was adoption. We weren't aware of really any other opportunities. And so, my husband's family at the time had two children that were adopted. And so they were like our family. It was not even a question of, did they feel different? Did we feel different towards them? They were just part of our family. So adoption seemed like the next right course for my life at that time. And so through our story, somebody kind of through, the grapevine heard about our story and that I couldn't have children. And they reached out and said, here's this young couple. They're not together, but they're having a baby. They're younger and they're looking for someone to do a private adoption. And so we met with that couple and it seemed like everything was falling into place. I remember thinking, gosh, this is why my eggs weren't here. This is why I went into menopause because I was supposed to be this baby's mother. And I wholeheartedly believed so strongly. And so, excuse me, we went through everything that was needed for a private adoption. We did our home study. We did all the things that you have to do. And we were prepared for bringing baby home. And so mom went into labor on a Thursday. And so we got the call to go to the hospital. So we drove from the town that we lived in, drove to the town that the baby was being born in. And we got to the hospital right before he was delivered. And so we were there and they brought the baby to us. And I remember holding him in my arms in the waiting room, just looking into his eyes, saying, it's so great to meet you. I'm so excited to be your mom, and I love you already. And just sharing all these sweet things that I had been waiting to share with him over the last about 4 months, I think we had from when they reached out to us to when she was born. And so in the state of Iowa, birth moms have 7 days to change their mind about adoption. And so on Saturday, before we were headed back to the hospital to load him up in the car seat and take him home to our home and to the nursery, birth mom decided that that's not what she wanted. And so we left the hospital empty handed with an empty car seat and headed home to a house with an empty nursery. And so that was very life altering. It's relationship altering. It's family altering. And so our whole family was in the waiting room with us when we met him and everyone got to meet him and they all expected this to be their grandson as well as our son. So, and when you're 25, you're still really not prepared for the gravity of what that is from an emotional standpoint. You're still so young at 25. And so navigating that was very challenging. And what I learned through that was I was willing to do whatever it took to become a mom. I didn't care what it was going to be. I was going to be a mom someday. And my husband at the time, he felt a little bit differently in some ways. Another opportunity for a private adoption came up and it was something that he's just like, I can't do this. I can't go through that again. And over the course of a year, I would say from that time, or a little bit longer than a year, we realized that we were just going in two different paths. And, what I was willing to do to become a mom and just for my life was different than the path that he wanted to be on. And so, a lot of people talk about how infertility impacts relationships. And it's true. It can either be the maker or the breaker, I guess I would say, related to that, because it did break us. We just didn't recover. And so that was hard. I found myself I think I was 27 by this point. I found myself divorced. I found myself believing and thinking that I couldn't have children. And that was a hard place to be in as a 27. You feel unwanted. You feel unloved. You feel unworthy. You feel as if no one's going to want you when that's the story you have to tell them. And so the story of meeting my husband now is it's another long story. So I'm not sure how we want to do that, but it's hard because when you're faced with things like this that you're not planning on at such an early age, and when you're married, some of those conversations you don't have when you're dating before you get married. Like, okay, what are we going to do if we can't have a child? That's not a conversation that's generally had. But I feel strongly now that it's one that you should really have because, with the rate being 1 in 6 of couples and 1 in 4 of women that are impacted by infertility, it's highly likely that yourself or someone within your circle is going to struggle with this. And those are conversations you want to have and be prepared for going into a marriage because it can really rock you.
I think you are absolutely right. And you're right. I wouldn't even have thought of that because, and this will tie into, and I'll get back to, I love that you shared your feelings around what that looked like for you as a woman, right? How that feels as a woman now to feel like you had this support and no blame or guilt or shame on him, but I'm saying that's his journey. But for you as a woman, this is something that is quote unquote natural. This is what we're made to do. And to carry now this feeling of shame, right? Guilt, blame, like why you probably went through the ringer with all of these things. Did you seek counseling or did you just work through this yourself?
That's the tough thing. I have actually tried therapy multiple different times because I wholeheartedly believe in therapy. But I will tell you, when it comes to infertility, I have found that a lot of times therapists are not, I wouldn't say, as I wouldn't say
Qualified?
understanding, but they're just not, it's not as, or just, yeah, it's common because if they haven't experienced it, it is something that's very difficult to go to therapy about and have somebody understand the true depths of like what you're going through or what the things you've struggled with. And so I did try going a few times, and after you spend your time trying to explain like what is infertility or what
Right.
is early menopause or what does that all mean, that can be challenging. And so for me, I think at that time, I did it a lot alone. There was not a lot of support groups. There was not a lot of resources for people in my situation with early menopause. I didn't know anybody going through infertility, let alone early menopause, and just the physical struggles that you go through trying to get that regulated. And then the relationship emotional side that I was going through. And so I found myself in a situation where, my relationship with God was definitely questionable. I got pretty upset. Um, the guilt and the shame was pretty strong. I looked at it as in, if my body is not able to do what as a woman it's designed to do, what did I do wrong? Why am I not given the privilege to carry a child or to have my DNA, given through a child? Why me? What did I do wrong? Or, I felt like I was getting punished for so many years. I believed that for so many years. Like I was somehow being punished for something because, my body should do what every woman's body could do. And it just didn't. And so I would say there was a few dark years of really struggling with that. And so I actually just threw myself into work instead of really dealing with it. I just went full force in my nursing career, and I moved into a management position, and I focused so much on that I kind of put that in a basket in the back of my mind, which I wouldn't say is the healthiest thing to do, but it's how I coped during that time.
Right, you had to compartmentalize it. And that is something that I think works in your favor as a nurse. I think we have to. I was an emergency dispatcher, and I think you have to know how to compartmentalize things. So when was it you met your husband? Was it 27 then? That's when you met him? Or that's when you got your
Yeah, oh
divorce?
gosh, how old was I? Well, I can tell you what. Yes, I was divorced right around when I was
Okay,
27,
okay,
because that
okay.
would have been in 2015. Yes. I'm so bad with my age. I'm so much better with the
Oh
years, but
my
my age, I'm
gosh.
like, what age was I in that
Don't
year?
even make me try to think of anything like that right
Oh.
now. You're just I don't know, it just happened one time. That's okay.
It was
Well, what
this
I'm
year, but how old I was in that year?
right. Well, so what I'm trying to establish is, so along comes your husband. How did you find the courage to open this back up with him? Because this has been something that you're like dreading. Every date you have to say, by the way, we can't have kids, right? Which is not the case, but you thought it was. So you've built this up to be this bomb, right? That you're dreading telling these guys that you're going on dates with. So not only are you thinking about how many dates do I let this go before I drop this bomb and all these things. What was going on with you with this in your relationship when you met him?
Sure. So, yeah, I was thinking I was diagnosed at 25, divorced at 27, and then I met my husband closer to when I was about 29. And so, in between 27 and 29, yes, you're right. Dating was definitely interesting. I wasn't planning on having to date around when I was 27 years old, but the way, kind of what you said, the way I handled it was a lot of times I didn't say anything at the beginning, right? Because you're just getting to know somebody, and who knows if you think it's going to go somewhere. And so for a long time, maybe I just wouldn't say anything if I was like, yeah, I'm not sure where this is going. There were a few guys that I dated in between then and meeting my husband that I did share the information with, and they didn't go running like I thought they would. And some of that could have been because they weren't at a stage in their life where having kids was a high priority. So they probably also didn't understand the gravity or what it would look like if we were to continue a relationship, what that would look like for us. And so I think in that regard, it gave me practice to share my story, but also I don't think they understood. I don't think they understood the gravity of what that was going to mean if we stayed together, which, we didn't. So then meeting my husband, it was very interesting because he is a physician and was working at the hospital that I also worked at. And we ran into each other in the cafeteria. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was when we ran into each other, but he was in line in front of me and he dropped his apple. I was actually on the phone with my dad talking about something related to Thanksgiving. And I said, "Hold on, Dad." And I said to him, "You're going to need to pick up your apple because you bruised it pretty bad when you dropped it." Like, who says that? Like to a random
Smooth,
stranger in the
smooth
cafeteria line.
Emily.
And like I was actually dating somebody at that point. So it wasn't even a pickup line. It was just like what prompted me to say something to an individual that I didn't know while I was on the phone. And looking back now, it was all kind of meant to be, I guess, in a weird way, because from that moment, my husband's name is Samir. He was like, "Who is this woman?" And I need to find out more about her. And so he actually spent the whole next year while he was working there getting to know me from afar. I had no idea he was doing this. I didn't know until we started dating, but he was asking around, like, "Who is Emily? And what is she like?" And I was in management at that time. So he watched how I ran my team and managed my team and how I treated them and how I treated the doctors. And we ended up in a few meetings here and there. And then about a year later, I had actually just broke up with the boyfriend that I was with during the Apple incident. And I would say it was probably 6 weeks after we had broken up. And he comes to knock on my office door and I wasn't there. And so then we passed in the hallway and he said, "Hey, I came by to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh no, is there a patient problem? Like, did one of my nurses treat you badly?" He was like, "No, I just wanted to talk to you." And so through that little connection, we ended up chatting and he asked me out on a date and I called my dad and I said, me and my boyfriend just broke up, about 6 weeks ago. It seems kind of early. And my dad said, "That man has been waiting for a year to take you on a date. He deserves you to give him at least a dinner date." And I was like, "Okay, well, I guess I'll give him a dinner date." And here we are, 9 years later. So that's how we met in the hospital. And then he went through after we got pretty serious, I would say, and I was telling him about my story, which is a whole nother interesting story about that, which I would love to share if we have time. He had looked at my medical records to see kind of what was going on because I hadn't really looked at them for almost 4 years now. I just was like, this is my story. And he's like, "Your uterus is fine, Emily." He was like, "You can carry a baby. You just have to use donor eggs." And I was like, "What are donor eggs?" I think, "Is this a thing?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is very much a thing. You can you can carry a child just with donor eggs." And that's kind of what, opened the world to me of like, what, there's hope for me to carry a child. And I started learning more about it. And once we got married, that's the route that we went.
That's so amazing. What's his specialty?
Well, when I met him, he was a hospitalist, and he does emergency medicine now. But Samir, my husband, is one of those doctors that
Wants to
I
know
should,
everything.
yes, I should mention. I was like, I'm never going to marry a doctor. As a nurse, you see so much not greatness.
My
So you're
sisters
like,
are
I'm
nurses,
never
so
doing this.
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. You're just like, I'm not going to do that. But Samir is different. I could tell he was different. And even to this day, whoever he sees as a patient, they are just so lucky because he has such a love for knowledge and for just knowing the current best practices, and he stays up to date with reading all of that stuff. So he's just very knowledgeable. And I give him credit for that because there's so much he knew about this journey that we were about to go on that I knew nothing about. And here I am, a nurse and a female. You would think I would know more, but he definitely led the way for us in that. So that was really wonderful.
I think that's incredible. So let's talk about how the Hopeful Mama Foundation came about. Where did that begin and what inspired you to, because a lot of women have issues and infertility problems and they get through them or they don't or they whatever, they don't go start foundations. So what encouraged you and inspired you to move forward with this?
I think ever since I was little, I knew I wanted to be a nurse, and I knew I wanted to be a mom, but there's always been a part of me that has craved giving back to people. And I'm not really sure where that started when I was younger, but I always wanted to make a difference. So if I could brighten their day by giving them a card, or if I could do something special for them, it was just something I always did growing up and then into an adulthood as well. And so when our oldest, Penelope, was about 6 weeks old, my husband was on shift and I was at home holding her. And I just had this moment where I was just overcome with emotion. And I was looking at her thinking, I can't believe that there's going to be women who can't experience this moment because of a lack of resources or a lack of education, like was kind of in my story, and a lack of support. And so at that moment, I didn't really know that that was going to be the beginning of Hopeful Mama, but it definitely planted the seed in my heart that I knew grew into how can I give back? How can I support women? Because I didn't have the support from people who understood on my journey. I was constantly educating my family about what was going on, and then I was having to do all the research. I didn't have someone to lean on or a group to lean on or education to look up. I was doing it all on my own. And so then fast forward until 2022, when we had moved back to Iowa from Arizona, and I was looking at getting back into the nursing field because my girls were older. And I thought, gosh, what am I going to do? What's the best way for me to be present for my children and available, but also do something? And my husband mentioned, he goes, you've been talking about this thing and you kept throwing around the name Hopeful Mama. Maybe you should really give that some time, as, this is a good time. We have the ability for you to do this. Why don't you just look into it a little bit more and see what that would be? And so come 2023 in January, I started researching about nonprofits. I was researching our area in Iowa to see what was available already, what was kind of already out there for people. And I was aware of things like Baby Quest, which is really great, and Starfish and Fertility Foundation. So I was, reading up more about what they offered and how they got started. And then in February of 2023, before we had really done anything, I actually created Hopeful Mama, and we became a 501c3 nonprofit before we actually ever did anything. That was just really important for me that we started out as a nonprofit. And then by April of that year of 2023, we launched. And so I launched with myself and my husband, and then I had 3 board members at that time. And so Hopeful Mama came from really that moment when our oldest was 6 weeks of realizing that I know that I could do something to help other women, and this was the way that I was going to do that. And so Hopeful Mama does that in 3 ways, which is we offer support groups, both in person and virtual, and we offer educational workshops that happen quarterly. And so that covers anything between women's health education to infertility and then mental health related to infertility, because that is something that was definitely lacking in my journey. And then also the fertility financial grants that we currently are doing yearly. So we had one grant cycle last year, and that because we're just a year old, we're in our second year, and we'll be 2 years old here in February of 2025. And then we'll have another grant cycle in April. So
That's incredible. I love it so much. I think I go back to when you were saying these men didn't appreciate, they weren't old enough, they weren't in that place where it was, and even women, I shouldn't say men, but even women that aren't, because for me, it was, you're going to be a mom. You're going to be a wife. You're going to be a mom. I was shown that. I was raised by that. So that's what was always at the top of my list. But I think for some people, that's not necessarily. However, like I think about with my husband, because we were older, we did wait longer. So we were married when we were about, I don't know, 25. So I think we had our first baby when we were like 28, 30. And he was still like, oh no, it's not time. And I was like, oh, it's time, right? Like if it wouldn't have been for me, but then on the other side of that, the words out of his mouth were, why did we wait so long? Like, why did I wait so long? I can't imagine what I would do if I hadn't done this. You know what I mean? And so I think there is a weight behind it, and that's with you holding your baby at that moment. It's like this weight, I absolutely can be with you when you're like, I want to give this, I want to help other women have this same moment. Hey ladies, quick pause in the episode because I've got something so exciting to share with you. It's time to make this year your year. My motto this year is let this be the year that you change. Not in a superficial way, but in a deep, meaningful way that aligns with who you truly are and the life that you're living. 2025 is here and it's your blank slate, your fresh start, your moment to step into the woman you're meant to be. If you're ready to show up for yourself, invest in your growth, and surround yourself with a circle of incredible, like-minded women who are on the same personal development journey, then I want to invite you to join the Revitalized Sisterhood private community. This is where connection meets empowerment, where we cheer each other on, work through the hard stuff, and celebrate every win, big or small. It's your safe space to grow and create the life you truly want, supported by women who just get it, they're doing it as well. So don't wait for the quote-unquote right time, because the right time is now. Head to revitalizewomanhood.com and sign up to start this new chapter with us. Empowerment, growth, and the sisterhood that you've been craving are all waiting for you. All right, now back to this episode. I'm such a, this sounds so ignorant because I don't know the female body that well. And this is now my fourth baby and I still am asking all these questions, but thank goodness for all these wonderful platforms that we can hear these things. But I have a dear friend who I cannot wait to get her in contact with the Hopeful Mama Foundation. They've been trying so hard for so many years. And she finally shared with me that it comes down to eggs. And so actually I was in my doctor's appointment, and it sounds so stupid because I wasn't even thinking about it. But my first thought was, hey, you're going to go in there and be messing around with my fallopian tubes. While you're in there, could you just dig out some eggs for her and just pass them along? And he's like, well, you're not producing any eggs right now. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But for me, that wasn't even a question. That wasn't even a second thought. It was, she's shared with me that might be the problem. I've got some. Here you go. Have mine. Right. So I really appreciate this work that you're doing. Tell us, with women who are facing infertility, and I know we've talked about yours. And actually, okay, this is two questions. I'm going to write it down so we can get back to this other question. But how did you cope with, actually, no, how would you talk to someone who's maybe in the depths of coping with these feelings right now of infertility?
So I feel like I talk to them all the time because I lead some of our support groups, and that has been really, really great. I lead our in-person in Marion, and then also our Monday virtual group. But everyone's story is so unique. And even though there is a common theme of infertility that kind of underlies everybody's journey, each story is so different, whether they are trying to get pregnant naturally and they just can't, but they don't really want to move on to assistive measures. And so they're trying to figure out, what can I do? Can I do a time cycle? Can I try like a medicated one, but not like an intervention? Or I'm in the middle of IVF, or, I'm just starting and I can't seem to get pregnant. There's so many different journeys on this road of infertility. And so, from an overall perspective, I think I would say what I wish someone told me on my journey is that you feel like you're alone. You feel like you are on an island and nobody could understand, or nobody understands what you're going through. But that's where, at least for now, Hopeful Mama comes in, because there are so many women that we have met on our journey since launching that have come together. And so to tell them that you're not alone, there are so many other women who can come alongside you and share in your journey and help you on your journey. You don't have to do it alone. And so something that we have kind of used as a tagline. I don't know if tagline's too corny, but we always say that you were never meant to walk this road alone, because infertility feels like you're walking it alone, but you weren't meant to. And so Hopeful Mama and the people of our groups come alongside you so that you don't have to do it alone. And so there is support, there is help. And the other thing I would say, outside of just like Hopeful Mama, but just from like a person to person, is um, your your body does not define your worth. So your body's ability to do what you want it to do or do what you think it should do, if it's not doing that, it doesn't define your worth as a person. And a lot of us feel unworthy and we feel like a failure on this journey because we can't do what we want to do or what we think our body should do. And it's a very common feeling to have the shame and the guilt of not being, and a lot of us feel like failures. Uh, so I would just like to remind them that they are worthy and their story is worthy and they are worthy of motherhood.
Do you I'm sure you have so many of these, but do you have a very specific one or two even, but specific moment that reignited your passion for what you're doing? Something that was just like something that just deeply touched you from this foundation.
Yes. Gosh, I think there's probably been lots of moments where something
Right.
happens and I think, my gosh, this is, meant to be. But yeah, I would definitely say there was one. We had a support group this last year that was our in-person support group here in Marion, Iowa. And there was two new attendees at that group. And it was actually one of our biggest in-person groups at that time that we have had. I think we had around 16 women, which is a lot to come to an in-person support group.
Yeah.
Usually we land around like 8 to 10, which is really good. But we had about 16 and I thought, gosh, how am I going to run this group? But, and get everyone to share. But what touched me was, when I was creating Hopeful Mama and I was putting the notepads, we have little notepads that go in the support group packets. And on the bottom, it says, you were never meant to walk this road alone. And there was a gal, one of the new attendees that came, and she said that she had really been struggling with her infertility journey and she just didn't know where to turn and she didn't know what to do. And somehow somebody gave her something that had this tagline on it that is actually from a song that I have listened to over and over through my journey. And she said the minute she read that, she knew that she was meant to come to this group. And I think in that, I remember crying in the support group when she shared that, because there's sometimes on this journey where I would try to incorporate very personal things that no one else would really know about, like how that tagline touched me in my story. But I just hope that it would resonate with somebody at some point, and to hear that that's what prompted her to come to get the support that she needed. It just really, it broke me and humbled me on the inside, but it also just reminded me that this is why I do what I do. So that would be one of them that I could think of recently.
It connected you.
So
It
much.
made exactly your tagline exactly true. It connected you two. And that's oh my gosh, I got chills. That's incredible. How do you think that this journey, your journey with infertility, has shaped you in womanhood? Not just in motherhood in this journey, but in womanhood. And like you kind of touched on it and I wrote it down. Your body does not define your worth. That is a concept, not even your body, but that is a concept that I am trying to drill into the women that I work with here in the Revitalized Sisterhood, is that our to-do lists are not they don't define our worth. Our, you know, anything. It's like you were celebrated for breathing. So start there. That's your worth, right? And then you build on that. But so much of what we as women are conditioned in is a lot of this. I was thinking about this today, and it's like, yeah, we do claim a lot of our value and our worth from being able to
Mhm.
give birth, being able to, and I hear it all the time with women who can't breastfeed or can't deliver vaginally or think that there's something wrong with them because they have a premature baby. And it's like, no, this this is not, scrape this all down to how has this affected you in your journey as far as like womanhood and how you view that?
Definitely. I think from just a woman's standpoint, I learned that I am enough as I am, even outside of infertility or what my body could do. And my husband was a huge proponent of that because when we started talking and I was sharing my journey with him, I was so worried about that. And he's like, I love you for who you are, not for what your body can do. And that's outside of just infertility, because sometimes we want to do things that our body just can't physically do, or we don't have the mental strength to do it right now, or emotionally, we're just not in a point where we can do whatever it is that we need to do. And so for me, from just growing as a woman, I've learned that I do not hold my value in what I can put out. What can I push out? What can I, manufacture, or what can I get done in a day? And so I'm enough just as I am. And if today is a day where I don't get anything done, I am still enough to myself and to my family and to my friends and all of that. I also very much learned that somebody will love me for who I am, not because of what I can give them or what I can produce or how my body can, relate to them. You have to, that would be one thing I would share to women outside of infertility is when you're looking for someone to spend your life with and a partner, it is so important to find someone who loves you just as you are. Not that you need to change, that not that you can give them something or do something for them, but even if you were unable to do anything, they would still just love you for the spirit that you have within you. And it's really important. And they're out there. It took me a while and I found him, but they're out there for everyone, I feel. And it's so important to not settle. And I think as a woman, that's what I found was I'm lovable. I'm worthy to be loved, and making sure that I just push forward until I found the person who spoke to my spirit that way.
How this is perfect. It lines right up with this question I want to ask is during infertility journeys, but anything, womanhood, dealing with conditioning, dealing with outside external comparison, self-esteem, right? All of these things that we deal with. What were some of the practices and habits that you had to implement to help you stay hopeful and resilient through all of this? To be able to say, I am, worthy of a man like Samir who loves me for me, just for breathing.
Well, in the world we live in today, I will tell you, I got off social media and I got off of it real fast.
Yeah.
I did. Unfortunately, social media can creep up on you and you can find yourself comparing more than sharing. And it can be a tool that is useful. And then it can be a tool that can be very detrimental. And so during that time for me, after I got divorced and I was kind of on my own in search of what was to come, I just got off social media because it was a practice that was not good for me at that time. And I was able to then, without the time I spent on social media, I was able to implement actual things in my daily life. And so I journaled a lot. I journaled so much. And sometimes what journaling looked like for me wasn't the get a notebook and write this beautiful thing. That's not what it looks like. And sometimes people are scared to journal because they're like, well, it's going to not be this beautiful written thing. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes there was words, just words on a page of how I was feeling. It was like a brain dump that just short sentences or words. And sometimes there was one word, hopeless. I would just write hopeless. I feel hopeless. And that's all I had on a page that day. But it taught me to get into the practice of getting what my feelings were out of my body so that I could release them and start to work through and then bring in better positive feelings or better emotions to make sure that I was moving forward and not just kind of staying stagnant. Because for a while I was just living in a pit of dark and I just wanted to stay there. And I was like, no, I have to like pull myself out of here. And so that was one of the ways of doing that was getting rid of social media, journaling. I got outside a lot. And I know that sounds kind of corny because people are like, oh, yeah, just go for a walk. It'll fix everything. No, it doesn't fix everything. But what it does do is it helps you reground with yourself. It allows you to breathe in some fresh air, which is good for everybody, and just be away from all of the to-do things that you have going on in your house or your office or whatever it is, and allows your mind to be free and to just kind of put out again into the universe, whatever it is that's in you, and just like release it. And so that was really, really beneficial for me too during that time.
Those are two of my most favorite things that we talk about as well. And journaling, I love that you specified that because it does for so many women, it becomes this point of like what it's supposed to look like. And I'm like,
Mhm.
who decided what a journal is supposed to look like? Like, did this happen when we were all, it's like on Shrek, how it's all Dear Diary, And she's like, and I'm like, did we all get some lesson when we were 8 years old that said your diary has to read this way or it has to be this book or this novel or something? We all watched the same show. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes I told one of my gals, I'm like, go outside for a walk by yourself and talk to yourself. Like legitimately talk to the air. Like run through scenarios in your head. You know those moments when you're somewhere and someone says something and you wish you would have said something back or something, and you replay this, or you have a fight with your husband and you replay it over and like, I wish I would have said this, or go have that conversation. Go for a walk. That's journaling. That is you getting the clutter in your mind out and the chaos out and just so I actually really, really thank you for specifying that because it's one of my favorite things. What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions about infertility that you wish more people understood?
I think the biggest one is that if you do IVF, you get a baby. That is
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
biggest misconceptions. IVF is a chance to have a baby. It's a chance at a baby. It is not a guarantee of a baby. And I think sometimes when people are going through infertility and people mean well, and they're like, oh, well, have you thought about trying this or, just do IVF? Well, first of all, it's very expensive. But secondly, it is not a guarantee. Unfortunately, with infertility, no matter what route you go, whether it's an IUI, IVF, adoption, surrogacy, whatever it is, there is no guarantee. And people outside of the infertility world who has the blessed ability to get pregnant naturally, sometimes the ignorance is not because they intended to be ignorant, but just the ignorance of not realizing that it is not just as easy to just have a baby like it is for you. It is a long process that costs lots of money. It impacts your emotion, your relationships, your mental state, and there's no guarantee. So I would say that's probably the biggest misconception that I would like to drive home all the time is that it doesn't guarantee anything. And I think the second one for me would be sometimes infertility journeys and how different people get to parenthood. Their journeys are looked at as less valuable or less worthy because they weren't able to conceive naturally. So the fact that they needed assistive measures, or the fact that they needed medication, or the fact that they needed to use a surrogate because they couldn't carry in their body, or because they needed to use a donor egg or a donor sperm or a donor embryo or adoption, that because they had to use a different route to parenthood, that it is not as worthy as if you could just and I hopefully it's okay that I say this, but I like to be very honest, is just because you can have sex and have a baby doesn't mean that any other route of not getting that way is less valuable. And so I feel like I try to share that a lot on my platform, and we talk a lot about it in support groups, that your story is so worthy and your journey to parenthood is still valuable regardless of how you get there, because families are created in so many ways, and how you get there is not really what makes it valuable or worthy.
Oh my gosh. I actually, for me, I hear you and I can feel that sentiment. For me, I think the opposite. I think you are doing hard work. You are facing these challenges and continuing to push through them when there isn't a guarantee at the other end, versus like you said, you get knocked up at prom or something. I mean, like whatever. It's just because you had sex and here's this baby. I think that in some of those situations, it's obviously not as special when you have to work for something. I think anybody who's ever gotten more than one negative pregnancy test has felt a tiny bit of that, oh, wait a minute, right? Like this isn't going to be as easy as I just thought, or why does everybody make this sound like it's so easy? Or why is this story behind this that all you do is have sex and you get a baby? Because that's not the truth. And that's rarely the truth anymore. I swear it's probably because of all of the chemicals we eat and everything in our environment, but seems like it's not that way anymore. But so thank you for that. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't, how the baby becomes part of your family doesn't matter. It's all cool. I love all of them. I love all the stories. I love it all. I've been actually doing my Friday episodes this month because we're on baby watch. So this month has been baby stories, birth stories, because I love them. I think they're amazing. If no one else loves them, don't listen to them. But I think they are so fun and I love listening to them and how different they all are. But the fact of the matter is I have heard some cool ways of how people become a family, and it's incredible. The universe and God and whoever you want to talk about, it's incredible how those little humans get to be part of families. So, hey, does adoption cross into your foundation at all?
Do you mean like support-wise for adoption or fertility grants for adoption?
Anything is adoption part of that, or?
So, I'm trying to say I'm trying to describe this in the best way. So when we do
Sure.
support groups or any type of resources that we offer, it is for anyone on their journey. So let's say they know that they're going to go down the adoption route, and because
Okay.
they are choosing to not do assistive measures, or they just know they can't carry a baby and they can't afford surrogacy, or they don't want to do surrogacy, but they still have infertility, they are welcome to come to all of our groups and all the resources. Hopeful Mama is specifically when it comes to our fertility grants, where we help support from a financial standpoint. The biggest requirement, and pretty much the only main requirement, is that the person who's applying is a female who has an infertility diagnosis. So let's say there's somebody who wants to adopt, but they don't have a fertility diagnosis. They just feel in their heart like this is how they want to grow their family. They would not be able to apply for a grant because they don't have an infertility diagnosis, but they are welcome to come to all of our support groups. I just don't maybe know if it would be as beneficial since we're so heavily focused on infertility. But if there is someone who is on an infertility journey and they've chosen, okay, we've tried all these things, it's not working, we're choosing adoption, they would still fall into the resources and the grant that we offer. They just, again, are a female with an infertility diagnosis related to grants.
Sure. And I love the support as well, because like you said, how many people get to that point where they think they're going home with a baby and they think they're coming home to a nursery and they're going to fill that nursery and they don't go home with that baby. That's, I can't even. Anyway, so, and they need that support. They need that support group.
Yeah.
How much of your because of how your journey was with therapy and in dealing with this, how much I am coming to a question. Just wait. If you want to go back and listen to it, it was actually a really great episode I just put out with Becca Post, and she is a therapist, and she talks a lot about her movement is after therapy. It's called after therapy. So, because she talks so much about in therapy, they do go backwards so much. They go backwards so much. They go backwards so much. But so coaching is the act of going forward, right? Going forward with your story. And I loved that we got to talk about the distinction between those two things. So how much of your support group do you think relies heavily on digging into the stuff versus let's face forward. Let's keep moving forward. Is that I don't even know if that's answerable.
Oh, it totally is. It's totally answerable. And that's what's so awesome about, I think, peer-to-peer support groups related to infertility, because we actually cover both things. Now, could I tell you what percentage of the pie is 50-50, 45, 60, whatever?
Right.
I don't know. But what's
it's got to be a personal journey too.
Yeah, so much so. And so for us, I think that we cover a lot about, this is where I've come from. This is what I've gone through to get here. This is where I'm currently at. This is where I'm hoping to go. And so in our peer-to-peer groups, so frequently we're talking about, okay, this is the next step. And someone's like, okay, this is my next step. This is where I'm planning to go. And we've had people already there. So they say, okay, this is what you need to look for. These are the questions you need to ask. These are things you want to be prepared for. And so because we have women and couples at different stages in their journey, there's always someone that is probably a little bit step ahead. And so
Right.
they're able to say, this is what you can look for moving forward. And, we do have some people who, come to group. And I would say this falls into a misconception sometimes too, is that infertility always ends with a happy ending. It doesn't always. There are times where people are on this journey and it doesn't end the way that they dreamed. It doesn't end the way they hoped, whether it's because they ran out of funds or because they just decided, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. And they also need support. And so we have support for that as well, where they're looking now is, how do I move past this? How do I move? How do I go on with my life? And I don't have what I dreamed of, whether that's a baby or maybe that's a sibling for their first baby because they struggled with secondary infertility, which is very common. And that is a hard stage to get over. And so Hopeful Mama offers lots of resources for that. If you're in that stage where you're like, okay, I need to move on, I need to move past this. And so we have some people in our group where they're like, my journey ended not how I wanted. What do I do? And so we support them in that as well. And for those who maybe are past the infertility stage and they did get what they wanted in the sense of they are pregnant or they just had a baby, we've just launched a new mama group for those. Because I will tell you, it's very difficult to be pregnant or just had a new baby and still come to the infertility group because you feel like you don't fit in anymore. And those who are in the group, as much as they love you
Yeah,
and are so
you feel
excited for you,
guilty.
they're still stuck there. And so
Right.
Hopeful Mama realized that over this last year. And so in January, we're launching a new mama group, which is led by a volunteer who was in that same spot. She was struggling with secondary infertility, chose that her journey was over, even though it didn't end the way she wanted. And she's now a facilitator for this new mama group to help them into their next stage, whether it's pregnancy or as a new mom after infertility. And so yeah, I think we cover all of those things. And then we do have two therapist-led groups. And so those groups, I feel like, can do a lot of digging into some of the really deep personal things that maybe appear like myself wouldn't feel as comfortable or definitely not as educated in being able to do that. So we do offer two support groups that have therapists leading them that can really dive into some of those deeper things.
That's incredible. This is so cool. I'm like running through my head all of these people that I want to like connect with you in professional and in personal ways. I'm so excited for this. I can't believe we waited this long to get this out, but it's okay. You've been working on your foundation and I'm so excited for your journey. If you could offer one message of hope to women listening today who are battling with infertility or feeling like they're running out of options, what would it be?
Ooh, that's always a tough one, especially with the running out of options, because I know what that feels like. And that's it's a very heavy feeling to have where you feel hopeless. You do. You get to a point where you feel hopeless. And so I would say to them that no matter where you're at on your journey, that there are people who know what it feels like to be in that moment and to come and join us because you shouldn't do this alone. Don't go through this journey alone. And there are resources and support and finances that can help you. And even if it's the point where you're like you said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm done. Um, there's we have support for that too. And so I think just like I shared before, when someone's asked me like, what would you tell somebody struggling with infertility? It's honestly that you're not alone because I can't tell you myself and how many women when they come to the group or I talk to them personally, the first thing they say to me is like, I had no idea. I felt so alone. I had no idea so many people had early menopause or had PCOS or endometriosis or are a single mother by choice. I had no idea. And so just reminding them that your story is worthy and you're not alone.
That's incredible. Well, thank you for the work you're doing. Where is the best place for them to come find you?
Well, there's two different options. We're very active on social media. So you can find us on Instagram. Our handle is just at Hopeful Mama Foundation altogether. We're also on Facebook, but everything we share on Instagram is on Facebook. So whatever one you prefer is fine. And then our website, which is just hopefulmamafoundation.org. And on there, it has all of our information about the support groups. Our workshops signups are on there too. And I should mention really quickly, everything Hopeful Mama offers is free of charge. There is no cost to attend anything. Even our fertility financial grants don't have an application fee. And that was something that was very important for us to make sure that our resources were accessible to all.
That's incredible. I'm so happy to be able to help share this message, and I hope that it goes for years and years and years because it's such an important journey that you're on. So thank you, and thank you for taking the time with me and rushing in here trying to get. I'm like, everybody hurry and record with me before I have this baby. It's like it's the end of the world all of a sudden. I'm like, everybody. You're like, okay.
No, it was
So
great. I was so
thank
happy to be
you.
here.
Oh, thanks, Emily. We'll see you later. Ladies, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and for sharing in this heartfelt conversation with Emily Patel. Her story is such a testament to resilience, hope, and the power of community, something that I 1,000% encourage and enjoy. And if this episode inspired you, I'd love for you to take a quick moment to rate and review the podcast. Your support helps us reach even more incredible women like you who are ready to grow, evolve, and thrive. And honestly, as we step into this brand new year, a blank slate of endless opportunities for growth, change, and connection, I want to personally invite you to join the Revitalized Sisterhood community. This is your space to connect with like-minded women, find support, and create the life you've been dreaming of. Don't wait. This is your year, 2025, ladies. This is your time and your chance to choose you. So head over to revitalizedwomanhood.com and become part of something truly special here in the Sisterhood. Until next time, beautiful ladies, keep thriving, keep dreaming, and remember, you are never alone in this journey. See you back here soon.